Breaking: Paul Heyman just threatened Seth Rollins' entire career over Cody Rhodes' match. Listen, I need you to hear what I'm about to tell you because the wrestling world just got flipped completely upside down. Paul Heyman, the wise man himself, has just issued what might be the most calculated and vicious warning in recent WWE history. And it's directed at Seth freaking Rollins. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. Heyman isn't warning Seth about losing to Roman Reigns. He's not talking about the bloodline. No. Paul Heyman is warning Seth Rollins that if he loses to Cody Rhodes, everything about his position in WWE changes forever. Let that sink in for a second. The advocate of Roman Reigns, the man who has orchestrated the bloodline's dominance for years, is now publicly threatening another top star about a match that doesn't even directly involve his tribal chief. What does Paul Heyman know that we don't? Why would he care if Seth loses to Cody? And most importantly, what exactly is going to change for Seth Rollins if he can't defeat the American Nightmare? Before we dive deeper into this absolute bombshell, I want to know your immediate reaction. Do you think Paul Heyman is bluffing, or is this a legitimate threat that could reshape WWE's entire landscape? Drop your thoughts in the comments right now because what I'm about to reveal is going to blow your mind. Let's break down exactly what happened. During a recent backstage segment that has sent shockwaves through the WWE universe, Paul Heyman confronted Seth Rollins in what appeared to be a casual conversation. But anyone who knows the wise man understands that nothing he does is casual. Every word is calculated. Every pause is intentional. Every facial expression carries weight. Heyman looked Seth dead in the eyes and delivered a message that was equal parts warning and prophecy. He told Seth that his upcoming match with Cody Rhodes isn't just another main event. It's not just another chapter in their rivalry. According to Heyman, this match is a crossroads for Seth's entire career trajectory. Heyman suggested that if Seth cannot overcome Cody Rhodes, there will be consequences that extend far beyond a single loss on his record. Now, here's what makes this absolutely fascinating and terrifying at the same time. Paul Heyman has no official authority over Seth Rollins. He's not Seth's manager. He's not a WWE executive. He represents Roman Reigns and the bloodline. So why is he inserting himself into Seth's business? Why does he care about the outcome of this match? The answer is both simple and deeply complex. Paul Heyman is playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers. He sees something coming that the rest of us haven't fully grasped yet. And that's what makes this warning so ominous. Think about the history between these three men: Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, and Cody Rhodes. These aren't just three superstars occupying the same roster. They're three pillars of WWE's present and future. Roman has dominated as the tribal chief. Seth has been the workhorse, carrying Monday Night Raw on his back. And Cody is the returning conquering hero who finished his story by defeating Roman at WrestleMania. But here's the twist that Heyman clearly understands. The power dynamics in WWE are shifting. Roman's reign as tribal chief, while legendary, has evolved. The bloodline has fractured and reformed. Solo Sikoa has taken control. Roman himself has been absent from television for extended periods. And in that vacuum, other stars have risen. Seth Rollins has positioned himself as Raw's franchise player. He's held the World Heavyweight Championship. He's main event premium live events. He's been the company's most reliable performer week after week. But Cody Rhodes represents something different. Cody is momentum personified. He's the feel-good story. He's the guy who left WWE, conquered the independent scene, helped create AEW, and then returned to WWE to complete his father's legacy. And this is where Paul Heyman's warning becomes absolutely chilling. Heyman knows that in WWE's hierarchy, perception is everything. Momentum is everything. And if Seth Rollins loses to Cody Rhodes again, especially if it's decisive, the narrative around Seth changes completely. Let me ask you something, and I really want you to think about this before you answer in the comments. When was the last time Seth Rollins had a truly dominant run where he wasn't chasing someone else's shadow? When was the last time Seth felt like the guy instead of a guy? You might have to think about that for a minute. And that's exactly Heyman's point. Here's what Paul Heyman understands that makes him the most dangerous mind in professional wrestling. He knows that WWE operates on a pecking order. There's always a clear hierarchy of who matters most, who gets the biggest moments, and who gets protected in defeat. Roman Reigns has sat at the top of that hierarchy for over 3 years. Cody Rhodes dethroned him and has now inherited that protected status. But where does that leave Seth Rollins? Seth has been in an interesting position. He's undeniably a main event talent. He's a Grand Slam champion. He's a former WWE champion. He's main event WrestleMania multiple times. But here's the uncomfortable truth that Heyman is forcing Seth to confront. Seth Rollins has become WWE's utility player. Need someone to have an incredible match with a rising star? Call Seth. Need someone to put on a show stealer at a big event? Call Seth. Need someone to elevate a title or make a feud feel important? Call Seth. But when it comes to being the singular focus of WWE's universe, Seth has been playing second fiddle to Roman for years, and now potentially to Cody. This is where Heyman's warning becomes prophetic. If Seth loses to Cody Rhodes, especially in a match that's being positioned as crucial, it confirms what Heyman is suggesting, that Seth Rollins is not on the same level as Cody Rhodes in WWE's current landscape. And once that perception solidifies, it's almost impossible to break. Think about how WWE has booked Cody since his return. He's been protected like Fort Knox. When Cody loses, it's usually due to overwhelming odds or some kind of interference that protects him in defeat. His wins are emphatic. His presence feels larger than life. WWE has invested everything in making sure Cody Rhodes is perceived as a once-in-a-generation talent. Now contrast that with Seth Rollins. Yes, Seth gets big matches. Yes, Seth gets TV time. But Seth also loses clean more often. Seth takes pins in multi-man matches. Seth is the guy who makes other people look good, sometimes at the expense of his own mystique. And this brings us to the heart of Paul Heyman's warning. What exactly changes if Seth loses to Cody? Let me paint you a picture of the potential fallout, and trust me, it's not pretty for the visionary. First, there's the immediate impact on Seth's credibility. A loss to Cody, especially if it's definitive, confirms the hierarchy. It tells the WWE universe that when Seth and Cody are in the ring together, Cody is the superior performer. That's not just a single match result. That's a statement about their relative positions in the company. Second, there's the domino effect on future booking. WWE Creative makes decisions based on momentum and perception. If Seth is clearly established as being below Cody in the pecking order, it affects what storylines he's considered for. It affects who he faces. It affects how he's used. Seth might find himself in more mid-card adjacent feuds while Cody continues to main event and face off against the company's other top stars. Here's a question for the comments section, and I'm genuinely curious about your perspective on this. Do you think WWE has already made up their mind about Seth Rollins' ceiling, or can one big win change everything for him? But there's a third element to Heyman's warning that's even more sinister, and it involves Roman Reigns and the bloodline. See, Paul Heyman isn't just watching this match as an interested observer. He's calculating how the result affects his plans, Roman's plans, and the bloodline's plans. If Seth loses to Cody, it potentially sets up a very specific dynamic. It establishes that Cody Rhodes is the top babyface in WWE, the man who can beat anyone. It establishes that Seth Rollins, while talented, is not on that elite tier. And it creates an opening for the bloodline to reassert their dominance over the entire roster. Think about it like this. If Seth can't beat Cody, and Roman has history with both men, it positions Roman as potentially the only person who can truly challenge Cody at the highest level. It makes the eventual Roman vs. Cody rematch feel even bigger because Cody has conquered everyone else, including Seth Rollins. But there's also a personal element here that we can't ignore. The history between Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns is one of the most complex and compelling in modern WWE history. They were brothers in the Shield. Seth betrayed Roman and Dean Ambrose. They've faced each other countless times. They've been allies and enemies. And through it all, there's been an underlying competition about who is truly the alpha dog of their generation. Roman won that competition. Roman became the tribal chief. Roman had the legendary title reign. Roman main event WrestleMania after WrestleMania. And Seth, despite all his success, has always been in Roman's shadow to some degree. Paul Heyman knows this. Heyman has been there for every step of Roman's ascension. And now, Heyman is twisting the knife by suggesting that Seth can't even position himself as the clear number 2 guy if he loses to Cody. That's psychological warfare at its finest. Let me ask you something else for the comments. Who do you think is under more pressure going into this match, Seth Rollins, who has everything to lose according to Heyman, or Cody Rhodes, who needs to maintain his momentum? Now, let's talk about what Seth Rollins must be thinking right now. Because Seth isn't stupid. He's one of the most intelligent performers in WWE. He understands the business. He understands positioning and perception. And he absolutely understands what Paul Heyman is doing. Seth knows that Heyman is trying to get in his head. He knows that Heyman is playing mind games. But here's the terrifying part: what if Heyman is also right? What if this match truly is a defining moment for Seth's career trajectory? Seth has to wrestle with some uncomfortable questions. Has he peaked? Has WWE already decided that he's a perennial uppercard guy but never the guy again? Is he okay with being incredibly successful but always in someone else's shadow? These aren't easy questions, and they don't have easy answers. But they're the questions that Paul Heyman has forced to the surface with his warning. There's also the question of what Seth can actually do about this. How does he respond? Does he let Heyman's words motivate him? Does he use this as fuel to deliver the performance of his career against Cody? Or does the pressure and the psychological warfare get to him? One thing we know about Seth Rollins is that he thrives under pressure. Some of his greatest performances have come in the biggest moments. When the lights are brightest, Seth has historically delivered. But we also know that Seth can be vulnerable to mental games. We've seen him lose his cool. We've seen him make emotional decisions that cost him matches. This is where the genius of Paul Heyman's approach becomes clear. He's not just making a prediction. He's actively trying to influence the outcome. By getting in Seth's head, by making him overthink the stakes, Heyman is potentially creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. If Seth goes into this match thinking I absolutely cannot lose this or my career changes forever, that desperation might lead him to make mistakes. It might make him too aggressive. It might make him take unnecessary risks. And those mistakes could be exactly what costs him the match. Let me get your opinion on something. Drop it in the comments. Do you think Paul Heyman's psychological warfare will backfire and actually motivate Seth to win, or will it get in his head and contribute to his downfall? Let's also examine what this means for Cody Rhodes. Because while Heyman's warning is directed at Seth, Cody is the other half of this equation. And the pressure on Cody is different but equally intense. Cody has positioned himself as WWE's top babyface. He finished his story. He won the big one. But now comes the hard part, staying on top. Every match Cody has now carries the expectation that he'll win. Every feud he's in, fans expect him to come out on top. That's a tremendous burden to carry. If Cody loses to Seth Rollins, especially after Paul Heyman has essentially predicted Seth's defeat, it creates a ripple effect. It suggests that maybe Cody isn't as untouchable as we thought. It opens the door for more people to challenge him. It potentially derails some of WWE's long-term plans. But here's what makes Cody so dangerous in this scenario: he's fought his entire career to get to this position. He left WWE. He bet on himself. He helped create a competitor to WWE. He came back and had to prove himself all over again. Cody Rhodes is not someone who's going to easily give up his spot at the top of the mountain. This match isn't just about Seth trying to prove he belongs on Cody's level. It's also about Cody proving that his position is justified, that he truly is the top guy in WWE right now. That his WrestleMania victory over Roman wasn't a fluke or a feel-good moment, but the beginning of a new era with him at the helm. The stakes couldn't be higher for both men, and Paul Heyman knows that. He's counting on it. Now let's talk about the broader implications for WWE's roster if Heyman's prediction comes true. If Seth loses and everything changes as Heyman suggests, what does that mean for everyone else? It potentially opens up space in the main event scene. If Seth slides down the card even slightly, there are a dozen talented performers who would love to fill that void. Gunther comes to mind immediately. The ring general has been dominant with the Intercontinental Championship and seems destined for main event glory. Drew McIntyre is always lurking, hungry for another world title run. Even younger stars like Braun Breaker could benefit from Seth moving down the pecking order. But there's also a darker interpretation of Heyman's warning. Maybe everything changes means something more specific. Maybe it means Seth becomes a target for the bloodline. Maybe it means Paul Heyman sees an opportunity to manipulate a vulnerable Seth Rollins into serving the bloodline's interests. Think about how valuable Seth would be as an asset to the bloodline. He's a former Shield brother to Roman. He's one of the most talented in-ring performers in WWE. And if he's feeling marginalized and undervalued, that's when someone like Paul Heyman strikes. That's when Heyman offers Seth a path back to relevance, but on the bloodline's terms. Could you imagine Seth Rollins reluctantly aligning with the bloodline out of necessity? The story writes itself. Seth loses to Cody. He realizes he can't climb back to the top on his own. Heyman approaches him with an offer he can't refuse. And suddenly, the most unlikely alliance in WWE history forms. I want to know what you think about that possibility. Would you want to see Seth join the bloodline if it meant getting back to the main event scene? Or would that betray everything Seth has stood for? Let me know in the comments. There's also the possibility that Heyman's warning is setting up something completely different. What if this isn't really about Seth versus Cody at all? What if this is about Heyman positioning himself for life after Roman reigns? Roman has been absent from WWE television periodically. There are constant rumors about his schedule and how much longer he'll wrestle full-time. Paul Heyman is nothing if not a survivor. He's always thinking about his next move, his next meal ticket, his next championship run. What if Heyman sees Seth Rollins as a potential future client? What if this warning is actually Heyman's way of establishing a relationship, getting in Seth's head, and setting up a future where Seth realizes he needs the wise man in his corner? It sounds crazy, but this is Paul Heyman we're talking about. The man who managed Brock Lesnar, CM Punk, and Roman Reigns. The man who can talk his clients into and out of anything. If anyone could convince Seth Rollins to turn heel and embrace Heyman's guidance, it's Paul Heyman himself. Let's also consider the very real possibility that Seth Rollins actually wins this match. What happens then? Does Heyman's warning look foolish? Or does Seth's victory somehow play into a larger plan? If Seth beats Cody Rhodes decisively, it accomplishes several things. It re-establishes Seth as a top-tier talent who can hang with anyone. It creates a more competitive main event scene where multiple people can credibly challenge for the top spots. And it potentially sets up a huge rematch or series of matches between Seth and Cody. But even if Seth wins, has Paul Heyman already succeeded? Has he already gotten in Seth's head enough to affect his future performances? Has he planted seeds of doubt that will grow over time? This is the brilliance of psychological warfare in professional wrestling. Even when it doesn't lead to an immediate outcome, it creates long-term storytelling possibilities. Heyman's warning will linger over Seth Rollins regardless of the match result. Every time Seth steps in the ring from now on, we'll remember what Heyman said. We'll wonder if this is the match where everything changes. We'll analyze every Seth Rollins loss through the lens of Heyman's prophecy. Here's another question for you, and I'm really interested in hearing different perspectives on this. If you were Seth Rollins, how would you respond to Paul Heyman's warning? Would you confront him? Ignore him? Use it as motivation? Tell me in the comments what you'd do in Seth's position. We also need to talk about the elephant in the room, WWE's booking philosophy and how it affects this entire situation. WWE has historically been terrible at maintaining multiple top stars at the same level. There's usually one clear number one guy, maybe a number two, and then everyone else. During the Attitude Era, it was Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock as clear 1A and 1B, with everyone else below them. During the Ruthless Aggression Era, John Cena became the clear top guy with everyone else fighting for scraps. And during Roman's Tribal Chief run, he was so far above everyone else that no one could truly compete. Cody Rhodes is now being positioned as WWE's top guy. The question is whether WWE has learned from past mistakes and will build a robust main event scene with multiple credible top stars, or if they'll fall into old patterns where Cody is untouchable and everyone else, including Seth, is clearly beneath him. Paul Heyman's warning suggests that WWE is falling into old patterns, that there's a clear hierarchy and Seth is about to be reminded of his place in it. That's pessimistic but also potentially realistic based on WWE's historical booking patterns. However, there's also reason for optimism. Triple H's regime as head of creative has shown a willingness to build multiple stars simultaneously. We've seen more emphasis on long-term storytelling. We've seen mid-card titles being elevated. We've seen wrestlers being protected in defeat more carefully. Maybe this match between Seth and Cody isn't about establishing a clear hierarchy. Maybe it's about showing that both men are legitimate main event talents who can deliver incredible matches. Maybe the real story is that WWE's main event scene is so strong right now that Seth and Cody can trade wins without either one losing their spot. But Paul Heyman's warning suggests otherwise. It suggests that this match has clear consequences, that someone's position will change based on the outcome, and that creates a level of tension and stakes that WWE hasn't always been good at maintaining. Let me ask you one more thing before we wrap this up. Do you prefer WWE's old approach of one clear top guy, or do you prefer having multiple top stars who all feel equally important? Your answer to that might affect how you view Heyman's warning and what it means for Seth and Cody. The bottom line is this: Paul Heyman has thrown down a gauntlet. He's made a public prediction that if Seth Rollins loses to Cody Rhodes, everything about Seth's position in WWE changes. That's not a small claim. That's not hyperbole for the sake of creating buzz. That's Paul Heyman, one of the greatest minds in wrestling history, making a calculated statement about the future. Seth Rollins now faces the biggest pressure match of his recent career. Not because a title is on the line, not because it's WrestleMania, but because his entire legacy and future position in WWE might hang in the balance. Cody Rhodes faces the pressure of maintaining his position at the top and justifying WWE's faith in him as the face of the company. And Paul Heyman sits back and watches, knowing that regardless of the outcome, he successfully injected himself into one of WWE's hottest storylines and positioned himself and the bloodline as the puppet masters pulling the strings behind the scenes. This is storytelling at its finest. This is why we watch professional wrestling, because when it's done right, the stakes feel real, the emotions feel genuine, and the outcomes truly matter. So what happens next? We watch, we wait, and we see if Paul Heyman's ominous warning becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy or if Seth Rollins can defy expectations and prove that he's still one of the absolute best in the world. Make sure you leave your predictions in the comments below. Will Seth beat Cody and prove Heyman wrong? Or will Seth lose and see his entire WWE career trajectory change forever? And most importantly, what do you think Heyman's endgame really is? I'll be reading every comment, so don't hold back. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any breaking news from the world of wrestling. This story is far from over, and you don't want to miss what happens next.